Well, the Scottish Government has finally announced an inquiry into grooming gangs north of the border.
Well, that's after a review found enough evidence to warrant further investigation.
The move follows revelations on GB News last year of a gang operating in Glasgow, prompting a review that was advised by Professor Alexis Jay, who is well versed in this subject.
Well, our GB News national reporter, Charlie Peters, has the story for us. Charlie, incredible news for the victims of gangs in Scotland.
And it's a big victory for them first and foremost. And they're also reassured that Alexis Jay, who had been tasked with advising that review that was originally set up, that could have been waiting 18 months to return, has been, in a sense, upgraded to now chair a public inquiry. Alexis Jay returning to an area of expertise for her after launching the first major report into grooming gangs. That was in Rotherham, publishing in 2014. So she will take on that role again, going north of the border with this specific investigation. And it's come after a lot of reporting in Scotland, from GB News principally, I'd say, but other outlets chasing up the story. Once we revealed that grooming gang in Scotland, in Glasgow in particular, that had been operating about a decade ago. Some of the details we were able to gather via a survivor called Taylor, not her real name, who shared with us how social care workers described her as wearing too much fake tan and denigrated her lifestyle choices, essentially, as it was outlined. We also found that the police had made a tentative inquiry but had not actually spoken to her, even though her name had appeared on an investigation. And also, when we looked through her records, we found an example where the ethnicity of the men she believes, as do I, had been censored from the report, all pointing to sort of the racial nervousness and the failure to prosecute these gangs, which we have seen across the country. Let's bring in now Joani Reid, Labour MP for East Kilbride and Strathaven, who joins us now. Joani, you have been central in campaigning for this inquiry for a long time now. This was a big issue in Scotland in September last year, before reports about these gangs, when the Conservatives tabled an amendment. First and foremost, what's your reaction to what Jenny Gilruth, that minister, said in Holyrood yesterday?
It's a really significant announcement for all victims of child sex abuse in Scotland. Some of them have been campaigning for this for decades and they've been dismissed, stonewalled. I was told by the First Minister nearly a year ago that organised child sex abuse doesn't happen in Scotland like it does in England. Then we were told that the reviews were sufficient, but now we finally, and it's been a long time coming, have a full public review. But it's a day for the victims, as you rightly said, Charlie, and this really is down to them. They've campaigned almost entirely on their own with very little support. So they're at the first and foremost in my thoughts.
And Jenny, yesterday, speaking to the mother of a survivor of these abuse networks in Scotland, she said that actually she had a lot of praise for Jenny Gilruth, the SNP minister, who had taken the time to meet with her and other people engaged with this crisis, some indeed from England as well, to learn about the scenario, which appears to have led to the decision to U-turn and launch an inquiry. I imagine there would have been some resistance inside the SNP, as there had been for so long before Jenny Gilruth took that decision. You must be grateful for the effort she has taken. I know she's not of your political persuasion, but the effort she has taken to launch this.
Yeah, absolutely. Credit where credit's due. But I have to say, Charlie, they've been dragged kicking and screaming to this point. The evidence has been mounting for some time, not least because of your report. We've had prosecutions. Victims have been telling the Scottish Government that more investigation has been required. I feel that victims have almost been re-traumatised by the Scottish Government, who told them that a proper investigation, a proper review wasn't necessary. And then we had that political game playing with Angela Constance, the Justice Minister, who misled Parliament on this issue several times. So it has been a protracted and quite a difficult process. But Jenny Gilruth has now done the right thing. What she hasn't done, though, which I think she really should do, is tell us why she has now reached this decision. Only a few weeks ago, she said that she was looking for the evidence that would show that proper investigation, a proper inquiry was necessary, but she hasn't laid that evidence before Parliament. It's all very secretive, and she should do the right thing so that members of the Scottish Parliament can do their job and victims know exactly why this has been announced. I suspect, it's up for people to come up to can draw their own conclusions as to why the Scottish Government has now taken this decision.
Well, Joani, there will be further questioning of the government as a terms of reference is developed. What do you want to see happen now in terms of engagement of victims and survivors and their families? Because, of course, it has been a battle for them already. What do you think needs to happen now? Do we need a sort of mass political unity on this issue? And second to that, what do you think about potential links between this fresh inquiry in Scotland and also the national inquiry in England and Wales, which is still being set up? Would you like to see links between those two inquiries? We've also revealed on GB News that many victims in England, including the Bradford survivor Fiona Goddard, were trafficked to Glasgow from towns in England, in particular Bradford. What sort of links need to be there to ensure that that border is not ignored as part of this process?
I think in Scotland we're really fortunate because we have someone that has the confidence of victims and of experts who's going to lead this independent inquiry, as you've already noted. That is Professor Alexis Jay. She's done this before in Rotherham, and I'm confident that she will be able to come up with a terms of reference, and she should be allowed and given the space to develop a terms of reference that she thinks is appropriate to seek the truth and accountability. I think everyone is in agreement that she's the right person to lead this work. In terms, I think it's really important that it works with the review that's happening in England and Wales. But I also think it's the right thing that there are two separate investigations. Scotland has a different legal system. We have different police force, but they should work in collaboration because, as you said, Fiona Goddard has given testimony that she was trafficked across the border. But I'm confident that Alexis Jay will be able to do this properly and effectively.
Joani Reid MP, thank you very much for your time this morning. Well, Andrew and Miriam, as you just heard there, Joani Reid, Labour MP, essentially calling for the SNP to come clean on why they've made this decision. Why have they U-turned? What did Jenny Gilruth hear that we hadn't already put out and other outlets hadn't already put out to demonstrate the need for it? What has she heard and what evidence has come to light since those reports last year that has forced that decision? I think that's a very important question for SNP ministers to answer.
It's an issue as simple as public opinion. Perhaps the public were really furious that the government was turning a blind eye, and there was a clamour for an inquiry from the public.
Well, in England and Wales, we basically saw Baroness Casey being called in, I felt, to give political cover to Sir Keir Starmer. He didn't want to U-turn after describing it as a far-right bandwagon last January. He needed someone to come in and advise him officially to do it, for him to then be able to make that turn. Public opinion was so strongly in favour of that inquiry. He did make a significant political misstep last January with that reaction, under so much pressure from reporters and indeed Elon Musk on this issue. Scotland, less of a fanfare, less of a swirling political climate around it, but it was an area of weakness for the SNP, particularly, as you've heard from Joani Reid, with Angela Constance, the Justice Secretary, being accused of misleading Parliament over her interactions with Alexis Jay. The SNP will now say they're going to leave no stone unturned. This inquiry will be looking at recent incidents of child sexual abuse and exploitation. We'll see where it goes and what those terms of reference will be, and if, crucially, as Joani said, they will come clean why they made this decision.
And just very briefly, we could now have these two inquiries running in parallel, both with the capacity to compel witnesses to appear. Do you think that will actually strengthen the case for the victims, or could it actually make it harder to filter out all the information?
I think it will make it much stronger. I mean, I've been rather moved, actually, by the number of victims in Scotland who have come forward since Taylor spoke out in November, in a sense almost of solidarity with their fellow survivor, to say, you are not alone. Even though the government claimed that the police didn't have any investigations of the kind they'd seen in England, these brave women were willing to stand up across Scotland and say, well, actually, they didn't investigate my case either. It's no surprise they weren't investigating. We have been ignored. We'll see where it goes now.
Interesting. Thanks, that's Charlie Peters. Now, coming up, it's, what is it?